Welcome to our Cybersafe Digest Weekly Podcast, Episode 7. Each week, we will unfold the most recent cyber attacks and will provide you with valuable insights on how to shield your business from these threats, along with practical steps and tips to enhance your cybersecurity.
Welcome everyone, and welcome back to our Cybersafe Digest podcast. We've recently held a special cybersecurity event here at Newways. It took place on the 5th of December. And as a special guest today, I've got one of our fantastic speakers. I've got Leigh Cockell. He's a cybersecurity expert from one of our security partners, ConnectWise. Leigh, thank you, and can you introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Toby. Pleasure to be here. We had a great presentation today and great audience participation. I'm from a background of working with similar sized companies in small to medium sized business and enterprise. Been in the IT space for some 17, 18 years now, I think, and really worked from all perspectives of looking after technology initially in my early life and moving towards more business orientated goals. And specifically that's been in cybersecurity, so for the last 5 or 6 years, and looking after risk within organizations and looking after what that means to your business and your goal. Technology is a part of that, but it's only a part of it in as much as we need to utilize technology to help us reach those business goals.
Perfect, thank you, Leigh. So we spoke about a whole range of things, and as we noted during the event, security is a massive topic. There's lots of different things we need to consider. From a risk management perspective, in your experience, in your various roles and in the things that you do at the moment, what are some of the things that an organisation can do to best manage the levels of risk that operating in the modern world currently brings to their door?
Yes, I think this is different for most organisations. First off, and I think you made a good point earlier when we were talking, the risk needs to be managed from the top level. You've got to have some kind of understanding, expectation of what is your risk tolerance in terms of how much risk are you prepared to take and put your business under. Typically, most organisations, the best way of understanding how that applies to you is understanding your assets and your inventory and understanding who owns that within the business units. A nice way I like to look at it is you get each business unit to look at those assets and go, how valuable is that to you as an org? If I told you had to look after that, how much would you budget towards looking after that? Because cybersecurity is a part of that. When we're talking about confidentiality, integrity and availability, sometimes we just focus on the availability piece and we just think about technology of keeping stuff available. But actually, we do need to think about integrity. We do need to think about confidentiality. And that can help drive an organisation in terms of what they're willing to risk, because you start to quantify it in as much as this sort of risk based on your business unit.
No, and I think that perfectly illustrates some of the things we spoke about today, in that technology plays its part, but actually there's a whole raft of other things, and we need to get everybody involved in solving for this problem that we face in the cybersecurity sphere. So kind of a segue through talking about risks and the risks of new technology. We've touched briefly through the day, and we see things in the press all the time. The risks that AI bring to businesses. We could talk about the potential advantages, but I think that's one of the things that people often don't think about, what some of these risks could possibly be. And I think that would be a really interesting thing to try and talk around and flesh out a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And I think as a new technology, what AI is doing is making threat technology more available. And actually AI is making technology more available to everybody, whether it's through utilising it as a threat tool or utilising it as an operational efficiency tool. That obviously has its benefits, in as much as lots of people can use AI in terms of making themselves more operationally efficient and using tools they may not have understood how to use before. The downside of that is that also applies to a threat actor. Now, if you're going out and you were maybe on the fence and you were an individual thinking about, I wonder what if I could make some money out of ransoming people, you're potentially more likely to do it now if there's a tool that instructs you, shows you exactly how to do it, how to target people.
You can ask in natural language. You don't need to be a techie. You don't need to be a coder. You can say, do X, Y, and Z against
the technology barriers to entry has been lowered for people. And I think that's probably the biggest threat that's going to be there. There are, of course, technology-based threats. So, for instance, there's been a research team recently that has shown that you can use AI to model Wi-Fi signals, and you can map everybody's movements in a building. Right? That's real spy level stuff, But that's not going to be used by your everyday person. So it's the threats that are available to your everyday person, I think, are the more significant ones.
And the threats that I guess are more applicable, as you say, having that kind of information is important and relevant to some people, but not to necessarily to Joe Public in their home Wi-Fi or somebody with their small business. So, I mean, it's an interesting one, and I wonder whether we're going to see almost like we're storing up trouble for the future with the way we're trying to adopt AI and make use of it on a daily basis, and it's only later down the line we're going to see some unforeseen threat or risk that comes back and bites us because of all the stuff we've done historically. I mean, we mentioned during the presentations today how some of these large language model solutions can be tricked, broken into spitting out their training data.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the dangers that I think is perhaps unforeseen, almost like an iceberg, is that when you ask ChatGPT or one of these type of solutions a question and you supply it with some data, it's where's that data being used after you've asked the question? Invariably it goes into the training set, I guess.
Yeah, it does in a lot of cases, not in all cases, but let's take an analogy of something that happened a little while ago. And there was a period of time where everybody was having their Apple accounts hacked and celebrities' images were being exposed, yeah? Now, whether or not a cloud-based company tells my data is all secure, nobody can ever touch it, and I've got privacy guidelines, that is exactly what Apple was saying. Mm-hmm. There are always instances and opportunities for people to compromise those environments. So yes, once that data's out there, there is increased risk of it being made available in the future. Now, companies are moderating that risk. So, for instance, the likes of Microsoft, Google are looking at ways, and Amazon are looking at ways they can host that more locally or limit the infrastructure so your data is not shared to their learning models. Mm-hmm. It's just stored locally. And I think you'll see that's going to come forth this year with regulation as well. The area that we're in right now is we're working with ChatGPT, who are driven by OpenAI, who are really their actual role is to push the envelope. That's what OpenAI are really there for. They're to see what they can do and how much they can push and get away with. And the rest of the companies are watching them because they're saying, right, you're the experiment right now. Yeah. We know you're probably long-term not going to survive this because all the laws and regulations that do come out, legal proceedings, they're going to go straight towards you. Mm-hmm. But we're going to learn from this. And we're going to produce a safe form of that in the future. So I think in the future, AI will get a lot safer and we'll have proper regulations around it. CISA just released some advisory on how you can safely develop AI and what kind of development boundaries and guidelines you should have in terms of your AI apps. And NISA are going to release their EU AI Act this year coming. And that is also going to target businesses in terms of what they should and shouldn't do. So I think the control will come, and it will come appropriately to the means. Just in the moment, we're in that kind of Wild West period where actually there is a lot of data out there. Yeah. You're right. It probably isn't being used particularly ethically or socially responsibly. And yeah, we are going to have some problems with that in the future.
Okay, so I suppose the takeaway from that is we don't stop using AI, ChatGPT, large language model type things straight away, but we just be mindful what we feed them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the cat's out of the bag. The technology's out there. It's being used. It's being used globally, including all the countries that have other forms of regulation, very unsimilar to ours. Mm-hmm. And the technology is going to be used either way. It's just we need to find a better way of regulating so it can be used safely and ethically. Yeah. I mean, technology is always been used for good and been used for bad, hasn't it? And, it has.
I guess this is no exception. So, I mean, and we see some almost outlandish claims around how much time efficiencies AI can save. So it's understandable why businesses and individuals are interested in seeing what it can do for them. So, but we just need to be careful, and as you say, regulation will catch up, and the dominant players today may not be the dominant players tomorrow.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, great. So in the work that you've been doing and the things that you've seen, are there any other areas of AI that you feel may be a force for good or a force for bad? I mean, we've seen things around AI writing malware. Some of the people that I've spoken to, not on this podcast, but just generally speaking, suggest that the quality of the malware produced is very rudimentary and actually doesn't pose any kind of threat at this stage. But I know, interestingly, through the course of today, we've spoken around how AI can be used to make enhanced phishing campaigns, for example.
Yeah.
How do you see that developing, and how do you see AI perhaps being used to counter that in some way?
So the enhanced phishing campaigns, we're already seeing that. So AI is enabling more natural language to be used in phishing campaigns. However, you can also use AI to look at how the language has been used and how your points of contact with that recipient has been made over a period of time. Now, you can use AI to look for patterns. So AI can be used to look for patterns that replicate this recipient or person sending behaves very much like a malware actor.
Okay.
Yep. So over time, things like email protection programs will have more AI-based pattern recognition and learning. So they'll learn to see those types of emails. So not just based on the content, but how it's been sent, what time of day it's been sent, who it's been sent to, who are the other recipients, where it's come from in terms of location, and patterns will be pulled out, and it'll be much easier to spot that. Now, they may not all be there today, but that's something that will get improved over time. In terms of other big risks, I mean, the social impact and misinformation, I think, is a big problem. Around AI campaigns, because you can, again, it's all about pattern recognition. You can target large groups of people, change their behaviours and why they think.
We saw that in the last presidential elections, didn't we? The US presidential elections, where Cambridge Analytica was engaged to campaign for a particular party and used a lot of that Facebook data to influence and encourage people to respond or behave in certain ways. So. Yeah, I guess that's an area that is quite concerning, and I guess as an individual and as a small business, I have very little control over.
Yeah, it is an area of concern, and the upshot of it is when you have things happening at a social level, which is engaging millions of people change their behaviours over time. So as new generations come through, there's going to be less and less trust in what's posted online. There's already quite a lot of doubt around and questioning around what is posted, but if AI continues to push the way it does, and bot campaigns continue to push as they do, and they continue not to be regulated very well on popular social platforms, people are just going to get to a point where the platform ends up devaluing itself. So I can see that there could be some big changes in the way people consume social media, people consume AI and information that's driven by it.
Okay, well, we'll pivot completely now away from AI. We've got a few minutes left on this podcast. Kind of keen to just talk around incident response. Again, it's something that came up in the conversation today, and anecdotally, it's an area that organisations don't always prioritise to the level that they should do. Any guidance or tips on where to go if they don't have anything? What should the first thing that they do be? How can they better prepare themselves so that if an attack, AI driven or initiated or otherwise, occurs, that they've got something they can lean on?
I think there's lots of places to go for incident response right now. So if you should be talking to your technology provider. You should potentially be talking to your insurance companies if you're engaged with one. You could, ironically, even type into ChatGPT, find me a generic instant response template. Important thing really though is making sure it's applicable to you. So running through the process. That's the piece that shows you that really generates value. So I have an instant response and I know that I've got to call someone to let them know because I need something to be restored. Do I know how to contact that person out of hours? Do I know how to get hold of them? Are they the person that I should be contacting 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
Is there an alternative phone number? If I'd needed to restore my services, do my backups work? Have I tested that recently? Do I have a disaster recovery plan that's going to allow me to run in a virtualized environment?
Mm-hmm.
Do I, at the very simple level, have telephones that are still going to work if my internet's been cut off? Because I might have to isolate my office.
Yeah.
These are all things we don't think about until we run through. And there's going to be things that are specific to your business that only people in your organisation know. So the other part of that is make sure you get all your business units involved in that. You can't make a decision for your entire business because you aren't your entire business.
No. Okay, and that's perfect. And I think that's a really probably a good point to end on. I think it gives us certainly a strong takeaway on next steps around that incident response, because I guess it's everybody's worst nightmare to come into an attack that's happening, or to walk in on a Monday morning and see that they're fully ransomware or something like that, and it's knowing what to do. And I guess we all know from experience that people make poor decisions when they're under stress and things are all going wrong. So trying to plan it out when the sun's shining is absolutely the right way to go. Leigh, thank you very much for your time on the podcast. Thank you for your time at the event today. As always, very insightful, very informative. I'd like to thank all of our listeners. Don't forget to follow us, recommend us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Toby.
Thank you, everyone. We've reached the end of episode 7 of our Cybersafe Digest Weekly Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and to make sure you don't miss out on our future episodes, hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast. For more cybersecurity wisdom and resources, head over to our website at cybersafe.co.uk. See you next Thursday.